One day, a young actress named Heather Graham stepped onto the set of a Calvin Klein commercial. But this was no ordinary TV advertisement. For some reason, Calvin Klein's marketing department thought it would be a good idea to let filmmaker David Lynch direct. Not only did Mr. Lynch sell a lot of whatever the hell this advertisement was selling, he also found a muse in Heather Graham. Director David Lynch was so enamored by her that he instantly cast Heather Graham in the last season of Twin Peaks as Annie Blackburn, an alluring figure in the wacky town who falls victim to the Black Lodge. As if recreating the blonde muses of Hitchcock, Heather Graham seemed to inspire David Lynch, giving this talented actress the power to become way more than just a blonde bombshell. And even though she has proven herself over and over, the dreaded curse of the blonde bombshell followed her around most of her career. Always typecast as the ditzy blonde, but she plays ditzy at genius levels, y'all. One needs to be smart in order to get so many dumb laughs.
Are you such a hot starter? You're gonna break me in two?
You're angry right now. Do you want to sing a song?
Heather Graham is also an indie darling who has worked with brilliant filmmakers on groundbreaking films. And she is able to hold her own alongside the most talented co-stars anyone could ask for. But lately, it feels like we've been seeing less and less of Madame Graham over the past couple years or so. So I guess it's time to find out what the f*** happened to Heather Graham.
Then one day you all just drop me off somewhere and you'll never come back.
But to truly understand what the f*** happened to Heather Graham, we must begin at the beginning, and the beginning began when she was born on her birthday, 1970, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Upon pursuing acting at the behest of her parents, they disapproved of this willy-nilly artistic lifestyle, and because she chose this career, she unfortunately became estranged from her parents because of acting. Heather Graham did what so many aspiring actors do. They bounce around on commercials and small one-offs on TV shows, like Growing Pains, where I think she becomes the object of affection of Mr. Mike Seaver. But unlike so many others, Heather Graham hit success early on, earning a Young Artist Award for a fetching turn as Corey Haim's love interest in License to Drive in 1988. And I don't know about you, but I love any movie that features the Coreys.
And this is only the beginning!
She gives a wonderful performance in License to Drive and impressed many. And because of this, she was offered a role in Heathers. That's right, Heather was almost in Heathers. But her parents predictably rejected this idea because they called this movie Heathers offensive. What? A school shooting comedy is offensive?
No, that's the punchline. She's alive and in stable condition.
So instead, they pushed her into the role of Arnold and Danny DeVito's mother in Twins, in the flashback scenes. The next year, Heather Graham showed that she desired to be more than just a pretty blonde, playing a drug addict for master filmmaker Gus Van Sant in the movie Drugstore Cowboy, earning an Independent Spirit Award nomination. Heather is at times stern, other times vulnerable, but she gives such a fascinating, magical performance here. Also very tragic, heartbreaking, and fun. There was lots of potential to launch her into superstardom at this time, but she wasn't ready to settle, turning down a very possibly lucrative soap opera for it being too restrictive. She wanted to be free to experiment with her art, so Heather decided to continue with her supporting roles in very interesting films, as if knowing she wasn't quite ready to be a lead just yet. Like in the film I Love You to Death in 1990. and the film Guilty as Charged, also in 1990, and the John Travolta movie Shout in 1991, as well as appearing in numerous commercials like that Calvin Klein one, where she got her Twin Peaks gig from David Lynch. But it was the mid-1990s that really saw Heather honing her craft, like in the film Diggstown, or The Battle of Little Joe, as well as the magnificent film 6 Degrees of Separation, and she would re-team with master filmmaker Gus Van Sant once again with the movie Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. There was also a film called Miss Parker and the Vicious Circle, and Don't Do It, both of which came out in 1994. But it would take a group of fun-loving, swingin' hip cool cat characters to help place Heather Graham where she belonged. 1996's Swingers gave her another small role, but finally, for the first time in half a decade, Heather Graham stood out. Not because she's one of the few female-speaking roles in Swingers, but because of her sweet humanity and the complexity that she brought to the screen. She was what we call a scene stealer. Heather Graham had brought to life her most important role yet, because as a result of this, Heather Graham rolled right into 1997.
I'll be around.
That's not going to be good enough. I want to make plans to see you again.
And 1997 was Heather Graham's year, which included a surprisingly effective cameo in Scream 2 and master filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights, which really made people pay attention to Heather. Miss Graham fought really hard for this role, as it is probably her most sensual of performances, and that's saying a lot for her career. But because of Heather Graham's wonderful acting, this character that could have been, just a one-dimensional porn star, because of Heather, you were able to see this character's soul shatter, and she became beyond vulnerable, which at times could get very intense. And then, in the next scene, she could be very adorable and charming. And it worked, it was very believable. Very underrated performance. She added so many layers to this character of Roller Girl, which, is pretty good for an adult film actress with, a gimmick. And that gimmick is that she wears roller blades, roller skates, whatever you call them. But there is a wonderful example of Heather Graham's dramatic chops that can be seen when she's asking Julianne Moore's character to be her mom. It is a truly heartbreaking scene, but Heather Graham somehow makes this drugged up, desperate plea for love into a sweet character building moment that just makes you want the best for this poor lost soul. Aw, poor Roller Girl.
I love you, Mom. I want you to be my mom, Amber. Are you my mom?
Roller Girl is certainly Heather Graham's trademark character. Under the direction of master filmmaker Paul Thomas Anderson, Heather Graham was able to create a character that is way more than just a promiscuous ditz. But unfortunately, and strangely enough, ironically I guess, this character has been misremembered and misinterpreted by those who have never seen Boogie Nights, or only remember the poster or whatever. She was so good that it's almost impossible for her to escape what people presumed this character to be on the surface, if that makes sense. And at this time, for some reason, all of the major studios thought Heather Graham had to be a doofy, goofy, outgoing yet one-dimensional blonde, even though that's not who Roller Girl is. OMG, WTF. At one point, Heather Graham said, "I feel like I'm really smart, but I don't often get those parts. And I think sometimes it's because of how I look." And you know what, Heather? I think we can all relate. Now, Heather Graham was a Hollywood it girl, launching into the stratosphere almost literally when she co-starred in the sci-fi dud Lost in Space. And say what you want about Lost in Space, this movie, it's fun. I think it's underrated. And it was the first film to push Titanic out of the top spot at the box office that weekend, so that's something. In 1999, Heather Graham decided to embrace the comedic sex symbol thing with two hilarious performances: Bowfinger and Austin Powers 2, The Spy Who Shagged Me. That's right, Bowfinger and Austin Powers 2 came out in the same year. In The Spy Who Shagged Me, she plays Felicity Shagwell, and she does very well.
Shagwell by name, shag very well by reputation.
Oh, behave.
Keeping up with the comedic pace of Mike Myers, like she was born to do this. And in Bowfinger, she almost plays like a version of herself. A young, naive girl with dreams of making it in Hollywood, and I don't think she gets enough respect for her physical comedy. There is one scene in Bowfinger where she like wiggles all around to express the passion that her character is acting out, and it is the perfect amount of satirical overacting. I don't know, it's just hilarious. Just watch her. What is she doing there? I don't know, but it's so funny. Even though she still felt typecast, she did learn that working with people like Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy, and Mike Myers, that those types of people could deliver her material that would allow her to shine. Heather Graham's career was in full swing. At this time, she was now getting leads in movies that you forgot existed or never heard of, like the movie Committed in the year 2000, Edward Burns' Sidewalks of New York, a movie called Killing Me Softly. She was in that incestuous comedy produced by the Farley brothers called Say It Isn't So. And we cannot forget her hilarious appearance in Adam Sandler's Anger Management, where she gets to be angry and it's funny. And a movie called The Guru, again playing an actress who participates in X-rated material. These are not really necessarily good movies, but her natural charisma and charm showed that she was worth considering for leading roles. She can be a leading actress, y'all.
You see, if I was in the movie more, then we could be equals and I could trust you more.
Heather Graham was then cast in the Jack the Ripper thriller 2001's From Hell as a prostitute named Mary Kelly, opposite Johnny Depp. This is a pivotal role that is impossible to write off, as Heather Graham excels, giving herself more to do than her other roles at that time allowed. It's an interesting, risky, yet nuanced move in her career. She's still in her comfort zone of playing a promiscuous object of desire, but branches out with sheer dramatics. And she ditches the blonde hair. After Hope Springs, a tame romantic comedy, Heather Graham redirected her career, balancing her time between independent films and television. These gave her more opportunities for diversity as an actress. It allowed her more range, I guess you could say, like that Rosemary's Baby wannabe movie called Blessed. She was also able to work with master filmmaker Abel Ferrara in a film about religion called Mary. There was a drama called Broken, where she played a woman doomed to the fate of bad careers and bad boyfriends. Then she got to play a grieving mother in a film called Adrift in Manhattan. But of course, every now and then she would fall into the expected safe habits of the romantic comedy, like with the film Cake, or the comedy The O in Ohio, or the comedy Misconception. It's one of those movies where the woman is like, oh my god, I gotta have a baby before I'm too old, oh my god, isn't this funny? There was another comedy about babies, I guess, because the title is called Baby on Board, and she had hits and misses on TV too, like a pretty good 9-episode arc on Scrubs. She fits so well into that environment. I actually wished that she was like, you know, a part of the regular cast.
I mean, like, we've never talked. Ever?
How do I know your name then?
You don't.
You're freaking me out, Jimmy.
And there was Emily's Reasons Why Not. Only the pilot aired, though. Womp womp. 2009 offered another slight turning point for Heather Graham in the form of The Hangover. In a way, her Vegas stripper character can be seen as an homage to her character in Swingers, kinda almost. Her character has a sweet soul who is not there merely to just break up the hilarious testosterone, but she has an actual purpose for both the main cast and herself and the story. Yeah, it was really nice to see her. I remember sitting in the packed theater like opening day of The Hangover, and then when she came on the screen, everyone was like, oh yeah, Heather Graham, oh there she is, yeah. And even though The Hangover was a massive success, it wasn't enough for Heather Graham, because unfortunately she would go back to making forgettable flops. Starting with The Father of Invention, which was not her first 0% on Rotten Tomatoes and not her last. 2011 alone had the pulseless live-action animation hybrid movie called The Flying Machine. There was something called Son of Morning, and she would again try out drama, although she deserved much better material in a movie called 5 Days of War. But then, Heather Graham was able to show everyone that her fun, wacky, wild and free energy could work for a family-friendly kids movie too, in the movie Judy Moody and the Not Bummer Summer. The next few years again had her playing an adult film actress in About Cherry, shining in the strong cast of At Any Price, giving an unjustly dismissed turn as a psychologically damaged chef in a movie called Compulsion, and she reprised her role in The Hangover 3, although her performance is as committed as the rest of this disappointing, lackluster threequel. 2014 was a strange one for Heather Graham, splitting her efforts between the indie film Goodbye to All That and yet another sex comedy called Behaving Badly. But undoubtedly, her true shine of the 2010s came with her supporting turn in the last season of Californication. She gave a nurturing performance that has way more dimensions and layers than most of the other female characters of that show. So I hear. I've never watched it, but good for her. You go, girl.
Oh, Dr. Dan. Not you too.
I'm afraid so, Julia, but you can't pretend that you don't feel it.
The last half of that decade and the beginning of the 2020s has had Heather Graham branching out more than ever. There was that animation in 2016 called Norm of the North. She was in a crime thriller called Wetlands in 2017, and an interesting prison break drama called Last Rampage, and a western starring Machine Gun Kelly MGK, 2021's The Last Son, and we cannot forget the epic miniseries The Stand. She also did more things too. Heather Graham even made her directorial debut with the movie Half Magic, showing that she also has talent behind the camera too. Heather Graham also surprised many by giving what ended up being one of her finest and most complex performances as a single mother in The Rest of Us in 2019. She even surprised us by proving to be an activist, fighting against poverty and human trafficking by helping out with Children International and Cambodian Children's Fund. And so Heather Graham seems to have found balance. After years and years of interesting films, she's proven to everyone that she has the ability and the talent to branch out more than most audiences ever expected. And shame on them for not believing in her. I always believed in Heather, I'm just saying.
The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth like the gentle rain from heaven.
Miss Graham has worked with some of the greatest filmmakers of all time and appeared in mega franchises that shook up the industry. Yeah, some of her movies flopped, but others stuck and made their mark on the art of cinema. She has shown that she is truly a wonderful dramatic actress who can excel in any genre, but she truly excelled at one particular genre: comedy. That's right, when I think of Heather Graham, I think of the laughs, I think of the comedy. And you know what? I think she agrees, because retrospectively, Miss Graham would say that she thought that she wanted to be in really depressing movies that would win Academy Awards and stuff. But then she thought, quote, I don't really. I just want to laugh and find the humor in things. And I think that is a beautiful thing. So nobody should give a f*** about what the f*** happened to Heather Graham, because she's doing just fine.
And Paulo, if you're wondering about Saturday night, I just remembered. I already have a date.